If you had a microscope and could look at a piece of a leaf, you would see thousands of tiny openings which branch out until the leaf has all of the materials it needs. What happens now?
Hello, and welcome to this little lecture about organizing your project files in After Effects. This is actually a really important topic for multiple reasons. And I really wanted to bring this up right at the beginning of the class because it's so important, all right? So why is it important? For one, in this class, this will save you a lot of time and put your time where it's actually needed, which is in the animation. So for example, I've mentioned this multiple times, but if you don't name all of your layers, then it'll just take you a lot more time to figure out what's what while you're animating. And that's time that you'd be better off spent animating and not like digging through your project and trying to figure out what is layer 17, all right? So there's that. And also, as you get further into your After Effects career, you will be increasingly sharing After Effects projects with other animators, okay? So it's very important when you're sharing projects that things are named correctly and that there's a structure, an organized structure for your project, okay? Everybody has their own little organizational structures, and we'll talk about mine in one sec. But as long as there is one in a project, then another animator who gets your project can quickly work out what's what, and they don't have to spend a lot of time like trying to figure it out, and they can get down to the animation, which is what they want, right? And let me just say that if you hand organized projects to other animators, they will love you, because they're really OCD just like you are and just like I am, right? And they just like things named correctly and put in the right places, right? Just for their own sake, right? And on the flip side, if you are giving people disorganized projects to work from, they will hate you. I mean, at the very least, they'll be really annoyed by you. But you know, as you'll see, as you get further and further into After Effects, these projects can get really complicated and have hundreds of layers and pre-comps and folders within folders, and unless it's clear, you can drive somebody absolutely crazy with disorganization. So don't be that person, okay? Just remember, you know, and I've been over these before, but just remember sort of the 3 golden rules of how to organize your project in After Effects. 1, name all layers and name them clearly, right? So don't just call it like circle if you have 10 circles, but call it light blue circle or whatever it is. A clear name so that people could tell at a glance, and you yourself can tell at a glance what's what, okay? Number 2, name all of your comps and folders within After Effects, okay? So if this is a main comp, call it the main comp, and if this is like a pre-comp or whatever, give it a little designation like PC or something that helps you, again, at a glance, understand what it is you're looking at, right? Same with your folders, and we'll go over the folder structure in one sec. And speaking of folders, the third part of the rules of how to organize your After Effects project are to create a folder structure that makes sense in your project window, and then actually put all of the layers into those folders so they're nice and organized, right? This sounds all very obvious, but it's very easy to forget these things while you're in the middle of animating something. So let's jump into After Effects for 1 second, and I want to show you what I've done here, which is, and I definitely recommend that you do this right now, okay? Which is to create a generic project for yourself for After Effects, which has the folder structure in it that you think makes most sense for yourself, right? For me, it usually looks like this. I usually kind of have 2 folders, and I can open this generic project, by the way, and then save it as something else, and then I don't write over this generic project, and I can always open this, right? So in this Assets folder, I include these 3 folders, and Assets are just sort of whatever you're pulling into After Effects to work with, right? So audio, these are layers from Illustrator, which I call ILLs. I don't think anybody else does. And then PSDs. For whatever reason, I have these in all caps with like a little s. I don't know. That's the way I always do it. It's just something that I like. And then, you know, when I import layered artwork from Illustrator, I put it in this folder here, right? And same with Photoshop, and same with the audio. And then here in my comps folder, okay, I just have 1 folder for comps and 1 folder for my pre-comps, okay? And this is actually a little Joey trick that he showed me, which is to label your pre-comps folder with an underscore in front of it, and that way it'll always kind of stay at the top of that folder structure there, right? Which is kind of cool, just because, you know, if you have 50 comps, which you can easily get to a place where you might have 50 comps, this folder actually can get a little bit lost within the folder, so it's kind of cool to have the underscore there, right? So just, go ahead and make this for yourself in a way that makes sense, and then save it as a generic project, and then from now on, if you want, you can open that and then save as something else, and then you'll have that folder structure there, all right? So I think that's actually really useful. Something that's really important for you to understand about After Effects kind of right away is that After Effects projects don't contain the media that you bring into them, even though they kind of look like it. For example, if you import layered Illustrator artwork into an After Effects project, it is not actually part of what gets saved when you save that project. All right? What After Effects actually does is it references media, files, etc. that are on your hard drive. It doesn't actually contain them, it's just pointing to them on your drive, all right? So that means that if you save an After Effects project, or AEP, and then you take that AEP file and you move it, just say onto a drive or onto a different computer or somewhere else, and you haven't brought all the artwork that is associated with that project, it will come up with those color bars in it that I showed you in the things that will mess you up in After Effects, right? Where all the footage will be missing, essentially. After Effects will not know where, for example, the layered Illustrator art went to because it might be on a different computer or on a different drive or something, right? So it's really important to understand that that's how After Effects works. And if you do want to move a project onto a different machine or onto a drive or something like that, or take it to a new place and work on it, right, like a different studio or whatever, from home to a studio, you have to kind of do it in a really specific way that makes sure that you take all of the artwork and associated media with it, right? Okay, so I want to show you how to do that because it's actually really important. Okay, so I made this little After Effects project and this composition in After Effects here. And I've imported layers A, B, C, D, and layer E, right? Okay, and just say this is all animated and I want to move this now to a different computer or onto a drive or something or whatever, right? I want to move the project. And additionally, we've decided, the client or you or whoever, you've decided that this layer E, this is no longer necessary, and you want to delete this from the project and then collect everything, okay? So let's roll through these steps because this is actually a really important way to go. First of all, I would delete my layer E from my composition, obviously, because if you have it in there, it will render in there, which you don't want, right? And you could, of course, just delete that one layer up here from your project window. But let's just say that that layer is standing in for tons of layers that are no longer needed in a project with hundreds and hundreds of layers, okay, rather than this relatively simple example here, right? So we can't just delete that just right away because that represents hundreds of layers and we'd have to go through and that would take a lot of time and that would be kind of a waste of time, right? So let's just make that assumption. So what we want to do is reduce the project, which removes out all of the unnecessary comps that might be open or in the project, any layers that are not used, okay, and it just sort of gets rid of them. That's reducing, and that's interesting. Let's show you how to do that. If you select your comp, this is the way reducing works. First you have to select a comp or multiple comps. Just say if you have 10 compositions in your project and you want to reduce and keep all 10 of those, you would select all 10 up here in your project window, right? I only have one composition, so it's just going to look like I'm selecting one, but just say if you have 10 comps and you only want to collect 5 and save 5 of those, you would select those 5, okay, whatever. So whichever comps you want to save and save all the associated layers with, you select that, and then you go up here and File, and to Dependencies, and okay, what we're going to do is reduce the project. That's what you have to do to get rid of unused comps that you don't want, right? Like I was just saying, you would not select them and then reduce the project, okay? If you just wanted to get rid of unused footage, like what we're actually doing in this case, you would just go here to remove unused footage, and that would just pull out layers that are not in your comps, right? For example, there, I'll go ahead and do that. Remove unused footage, right? So I did that, and now it says one footage or folder item was removed. You can undo if you wish, which is really awesome that After Effects gives you the ability to undo this, right? So I'm going to hit OK. And you can see now that it took layer E out of that folder and deleted it, right? And if I undo this, Command Z, you'll see that there's my layer E, it came back again, right? So it's pretty useful in case you mess anything up, you can always undo. So that's removing unused footage, and I think you don't even need to have a comp selected to do that. Let's try that again. If I don't select a comp and go to File, Dependencies, Removed Unused Footage, yep, and it did the same thing here. It removed that E, okay, and I'm going to undo that again. Now with Reduce, you always have to select comps, like I was saying. So let's go up here and File and Dependencies and Reduce Project. Now in this case it says, one item that was not used by the selected items has been deleted. You can undo if desired. Yes, yes, yes. So essentially it did the exact same thing in this case, but if you had multiple comps, like I said, it would do something slightly differently. Okay, so it is now deleted layer E, and I'm actually going to undo that just for 1 sec, Command Z, and just to show you something. If this was in my composition, right here, and turned off, and I either went to dependencies and let's just say remove unused footage, or reduce project would be the same in this case. Reduce project, again, it gets rid of whole comps if you wanted to, whereas remove unused footage only gets rid of footage, right? So that's the difference. If I click this now, 0 footage or folder items were removed, okay? Because this layer, even though it's off, it's still here in my composition. So After Effects is guessing you don't want to get rid of that, okay? So if you do want to get rid of that, just make sure it's not in your composition, all right? And then you always want to save before you reduce. And then go down here, select your comp, and then go down here to Reduce Project, and then hit OK, right? So that's kind of step one. That's kind of cleaning everything out of your comp that you might not need, which just makes a smaller file. And also, again, if you're passing it off to somebody, you don't want to give them extra files that they don't need because they might wonder what they are or think that they're necessary or something, right? So the next step is actually really important. This is where we're going to collect the project, okay? And eventually it's going to get put in its own separate folder somewhere that you choose so that you can take that whole folder, which then contains all of the media and stuff you need for the project, and then move that, okay? So this is really important. So let's go up to File, Dependencies, and Collect Files, and then I just click on this, right? It says the project needs to be saved first. You want to save it, and yes, you pretty much always want to save it, right? And then it opens this up here, okay? This is the specific Collect Files pop-up window. Collect source files, I think for all comps is fine. It could be for all or just for selected comps, but I usually go for all comps, okay? And I don't want it to generate the report only. I don't care about proxy settings. You could reduce the project in this step if you had that checked on, so that could be a really useful time saver if you're collecting a lot of projects, right? But I prefer to do that manually because it is a little bit scary when it starts deleting stuff. And then reveal collected project in Finder when finished. Great, I like to have that checked on, okay? So then if we hit collect, now it opens this up and you should choose a good folder to collect everything to. You could, for example, save this to your Dropbox at this point, right? And my project was called Collecting and Reducing, so it's given it this name, Collecting and Reducing Folder. This is the folder that it's going to make where it's going to put all the stuff in. So I think keeping the word folder in there is good, and just choose a good place for it, okay, and then hit Save. And now you can see that After Effects collected this all up just like it should have and put it in the folder where you said to put it, okay? And it made a footage folder that contains the assets and contains the Illustrator layers, okay? It's using the language that I used in my project window, so that's kind of cool. It sort of customizes it for you, and here are all the layers. And then it gives you this After Effects project, as well as giving you a kind of like little report that's usually not that useful, that sort of tells you what happened and when it happened, etc. So now you could take this whole thing and you could archive this, you know, zip it up into something, put it on Dropbox, put it on a drive or whatever, move it anywhere, and then when you double click this, no matter what machine it's on, it will always know to use these files, right? So let's go ahead and do that. Right? So it opened it up, it doesn't have E in there, but it preserved everything. It preserved, theoretically, the animation that we had in there and everything, right? So that's really awesome, and that's how you move a project. That's how you reduce, collect, and then ultimately have the ability to move a project in After Effects. You know, an After Effects project, I should say. So if you ever want to move anything, any After Effects project, you kind of have to go through that process. So it's a little bit of a pain, but again, the reason why it does it this way is because After Effects does not contain this media. It just references it in a folder on your drive. So when you move the project, You have to move all the media with it. All right? Thank you very much. I hope this was not confusing, and I hope this makes sense, and I hope this saves you the trouble of one day moving an After Effects project just by itself without any of the media and then coming up with those color bars, which is super frustrating. Or from passing that off to another animator who might then get really annoyed at you.
If you had a microscope and could look at a piece of a leaf, you would see thousands of tiny openings which branch out until the leaf has all of the materials it needs. What happens now?